It was a corporate bonfire unlike any other. $47 billion, dollars, a number so large it feels like a myth. One moment, it represented the valuation of the world's most explosive startup, a company poised to redefine the very nature of work itself. The next, it was all just smoke, vanishing into thin air in a matter of weeks. This isn't the story of a business that simply went wrong. It's the story of a cult of personality. It's about how blind, unshakable faith in one man, his vision, his ego, his relentless messianic charisma, convinced the smartest investors in the world to hand him a match. And he used it to set their money, his company, and his own legacy on fire. To truly understand how we get to a blaze this big, you need to know three secrets hiding in the smoke. First, the astonishing story of how Adam Neumann convinced the most powerful investor in Japan to write him a check for $4.4 billion after a tour of WeWork headquarters that lasted only 12 minutes. Second, the bizarre, almost unbelievable clause buried deep inside the company's IPO filing, a clause that would grant his wife total control of the company in the event of his death, turning a public corporation into a private fiefdom. And third, how one tequila-soaked summer camp for employees, complete with a performance by a member of Run DMC, became the perfect, glittering symbol for the toxic, unsustainable culture that would ultimately burn everything to the ground. By the way, what do you think is the single biggest red flag in a CEO? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But to see where the fire truly started, we have to go back. Back to New York City, 2010. Here we meet Adam Neumann, an Israeli immigrant with boundless energy and a simple yet powerful idea. In the wake of the financial crisis, a new class of worker was emerging. Freelancers, entrepreneurs, small startups, all of them isolated, working out of noisy coffee shops and lonely apartments. Neumann's vision was to give them a home. The first WeWork space wasn't a corporate behemoth, it was a vibe. Exposed brick, free craft beer on tap, and a palpable sense of community. It worked because it was a solution to a real problem. But even then, the cracks were starting to show. For Neumann, this was never just about renting desks. He wasn't selling office space, he was selling a movement. He would talk about the energy of we, magically transforming a simple real estate business into a physical social network that was destined to elevate the world's consciousness. The numbers were always bigger, the vision was always grander, and the line between founder and profit was already starting to blur into insignificance. The company was growing fast, but it was still tethered to the physical reality of desks, square footage, and long-term leases. Then came the meeting that lit the fuse. In 2017, Adam Neumann met Masayoshi Son, the legendary and notoriously impulsive head of SoftBank. Son, looking for the next great tech revolutionary, gave Neumann just 12 minutes for a tour of WeWork's headquarters. In that whirlwind, Neumann didn't sell a business, he sold a prophecy. He spun a hypnotic, intoxicating narrative of global community and technological revolution, barely mentioning the words office space. He was selling the future, and Son was buying it. Right there in the back of his car, Son sketched the deal on an iPad, an investment of $4.4 billion. That handshake was the point of no return. It transformed WeWork from a real estate startup into a world-conquering tech unicorn with a seemingly infinite tank of fuel. Any internal voice of reason, any caution about the numbers was instantly silenced. Adam Neumann's wildest delusions were no longer just delusions. They were now the company's official multi-billion-dollar backed strategy. Reality had just been bulldozed by belief. With SoftBank's billions as rocket fuel, Neumann launched his holy war for growth. First came the blitzkrieg of expansion. The goal wasn't profit, it was total domination. WeWork burned through cash at a staggering rate. opening new locations in a constant blur of construction dust and celebratory press releases. They were losing an absolute fortune on every single new member they signed. But this financial hemorrhage was spun as a necessary sacrifice to capture market share. But dominating the office world wasn't enough. Next came the era of diversification, a period where Neumann's ego went supernova. He rebranded the entire enterprise as the We Company, launching bizarre and costly ventures like We Grow, a private elementary school for a new generation of enlightened children, and We Live, a network of co-living apartments. The mission was no longer to rent desks. It was to cradle his followers from birth to death. Inside the company, a silent rebellion was brewing. Executives whispered about the insane burn rate and the chaotic lack of focus, but any voice of dissent was smothered by the impenetrable cult of personality. To question Adam was to betray the mission, and no one wanted to be cast out of the promised land. The shift to the We Company was sold to the public as the final evolution of Neumann's grand vision, a brand to encompass all of human life. But behind this philosophical rebranding lay a move of pure, breathtaking audacity. It was a detail so brazen it felt like a parody, a punchline to a terrible joke. Adam Neumann, through a private holding company, personally owned the trademark for the word we. And for the company he ran to use the new name he himself had chosen, WeWork had to pay him a staggering $5.9 million. This is the moment the record scratches. It's the shocking plot twist that reframes everything we've seen. The soaring rhetoric about elevating the world's consciousness suddenly looks less like a mission and more like a sales pitch. The mask of the charismatic visionary slips away, revealing a man who saw the company not as a collective movement but as his own private piggy bank. This is no longer the story of a flawed genius. It's now a textbook study of conflict of interest and unfiltered, unapologetic greed. Then came the moment of truth. In August 2019, WeWork released its S-1 filing, the public paperwork for its much-hyped IPO. For the very first time, the entire world could look under the hood, and the reality was a financial horror show. The document laid bare the company's colossal, almost cartoonish losses, nearly $2 billion a year on $3 billion in revenue. But it was the fine print that was truly damning. It revealed Neumann's godlike control, the hundreds of millions he'd personally borrowed from the company to fund his lavish lifestyle, and of course, the bizarre clause that would let his wife pick his successor if he died. The market's reaction wasn't just negative, it was brutal mockery. The S-1 was ridiculed by analysts and journalists as a work of corporate fiction. The coveted $47 billion valuation didn't just drop, it evaporated in a matter of days. The IPO, which was supposed to be Adam's coronation as a titan of industry, was unceremoniously canceled. The party was over. The dream had crashed headfirst into reality, and WeWork was now staring into the abyss of bankruptcy. The final confrontation wasn't in the press, it was behind the closed doors of the WeWork boardroom. On one side, a furious Masayoshi Son and investors staring at a balance sheet bleeding billions of their dollars. On the other, Adam Neumann, still trying to sell the dream, still trying to bend reality to his will. This was the climax, his messianic narrative versus the cold, hard, unforgiving reality of math. And here, we get the answer to our central question. Neumann's charisma was a highly addictive drug. Investors, desperate for the thrill of finding the next Steve Jobs, craved his vision so badly they willfully ignored every single warning sign, every red flag. He made them feel like they were part of a revolution, not just a mundane real estate deal. But the high had worn off. The numbers were undeniable. The magic was gone. Adam Neumann was forced to resign, proving that even the most powerful personality can't bend reality forever. The very weapon that built his kingdom was the one that ultimately burned it to the ground. So let's close the loops. That whirlwind 12-minute tour? It worked because Neumann didn't sell Masayoshi Son a business. He sold him a reflection of his own God-sized ambition. He painted a future where WeWork was as essential as the internet, making Son feel like he was funding not a company, but the next stage of human evolution. And that bizarre clause in the IPO filing? It stated that if Adam died, his wife Rebecca, officially titled the company's strategic thought partner, would have the sole, unchecked power to handpick his successor, cementing WeWork as a private dynasty, not a public company. Ultimately, this story is the ultimate reward. You've seen the playbook in action, the myth-making, the seduction of a grand vision, and the cult of personality that made smart people ignore billion-dollar red flags. You now understand how a charismatic leader can weaponize belief itself, turning a simple business into a global movement. And now that you've seen how the fire starts, you'll be much better at spotting the smoke next time. In the end, the moral of this corporate bonfire is crystal clear. A powerful narrative can build a $47 billion empire, but without any real fundamentals, that same story becomes the fuel for its own spectacular destruction. And while one man's ego burned WeWork to the ground, the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos shows us what happens when that same powerful illusion contaminates something even more dangerous: our health. But that is an analysis for the next video.